The Tyson Fury vs Anthony Joshua fight has been talked about for years, but now that the dream matchup is finally moving toward reality, a completely different battle has emerged, and this one isn't happening inside the ring. It is happening behind the scenes over where the biggest British heavyweight fight in years should actually take place. Eddie Hearn has made it clear that he desperately wants Fury vs Joshua in the United Kingdom, preferably at Wembley Stadium, but the promoter has also admitted that he may be fighting an uphill battle. The situation has become so complicated that Hearn's latest comments have fans wondering whether the long-awaited Battle of Britain could actually be taken away from British soil. And when Hearn says, "I don't think we'll win," you know the negotiations have reached a serious stage. For British boxing fans, the location of Fury vs Joshua is not just a minor detail. This fight has always been connected to the idea of two British heavyweight icons finally settling their rivalry in front of their home fans. Anthony Joshua has built some of the biggest moments of his career in the United Kingdom, and Wembley has already played host to one of the defining fights of his career when he stopped Vladimir Klitschko in front of a massive crowd. Tyson Fury, meanwhile, has also become one of Britain's biggest sporting personalities, and a Fury-Joshua showdown in London would represent something much bigger than an ordinary boxing event. It would be a genuine national sporting spectacle. But the business side of boxing doesn't always care about tradition. According to recent reports, powerful figures involved in the event are pushing toward New York, specifically Madison Square Garden. The reason is simple: global television exposure, particularly for the American audience. A fight of this magnitude could generate enormous international attention, and staging it in New York could make it easier to deliver the kind of primetime American broadcast window that major investors and broadcasters want. That creates a direct conflict between the commercial strategy and the wishes of Hearn and Joshua. Eddie Hearn has been extremely vocal about his preference. He believes the fight belongs in the UK, and there is a strong argument that the British fans deserve to see it at home. Joshua's side has reportedly secured terms connected to a UK venue, which makes the situation even more complicated. Hearn isn't simply saying, "I would like the fight to be in London." He is pointing toward the original agreement and arguing that there were expectations surrounding where this fight would happen. That is why the current negotiations have become so tense. Imagine the pressure on Hearn right now. On one side, you've got Anthony Joshua and British fans who want Wembley. On the other side, you've got major financial stakeholders looking at the worldwide numbers and saying New York makes more sense. Then you've got Netflix, international broadcasting considerations, venue availability, scheduling issues, and the enormous amount of money attached to an event of this size. Hearn is essentially trying to convince everyone that moving the fight out of Britain isn't worth the trouble. And that is where his latest comments become so interesting. Hearn isn't pretending that this is an easy negotiation. In fact, he appears to recognize that the odds may not be in his favor. When a promoter publicly admits that he doesn't think his side will win the argument, it tells you just how much pressure is coming from the other direction. Hearn wants the UK, but he knows that boxing at this level is ultimately a business. If the people putting up the money believe New York produces a bigger return, Hearn has to find a way to make the British option more attractive. That is why Wembley remains so important. Wembley isn't just another stadium. For Joshua, it carries history. It carries memories of his greatest nights and some of the biggest crowds of his career. A Fury vs Joshua fight there would instantly become one of the biggest boxing events ever staged in Britain. The atmosphere alone could be extraordinary. Imagine Fury walking into a packed Wembley, Joshua entering in front of tens of thousands of his home fans, and two of Britain's most recognizable heavyweights finally sharing the ring after years of failed negotiations and missed opportunities. But there is a major problem: timing. A UK fight designed around American primetime television could create scheduling difficulties. Reports have pointed toward the possibility of a very late local start time to accommodate the US audience. Wembley also has restrictions on how late major events can continue, meaning that special arrangements or exemptions could potentially be required. So even if everyone agreed that Wembley was the perfect venue, the logistics still have to be solved. And then there is the financial question. New York offers a completely different commercial environment. Madison Square Garden is one of the most famous venues in sports, and putting Fury and Joshua inside that building would create a global event. For American viewers, the timing could be much more convenient. For the people financing and distributing the fight, that matters. Boxing isn't simply about where the fighters want to fight. It's about where the largest audience can be reached and where the event can generate the biggest possible revenue. However, Eddie Hearn understands something equally important: Fury vs Joshua is not just another international boxing event. The story is fundamentally British. These are two British heavyweights who have spent years being compared, debated, criticized, and discussed by fans who have wanted to see them fight each other. Putting them in New York could create an incredible event, but putting them in London could create something emotionally different. It could feel like a national occasion. That is exactly why Hearn is making this push. He knows that if he can keep the fight in Britain, the event could become a defining moment for British boxing. Wembley would be packed. The atmosphere would be unlike anything else. And the images of Fury and Joshua facing each other in front of a massive British crowd could become iconic before the opening bell even rings. But Hearn's biggest problem may be that he isn't the only person making the decision. This isn't simply Joshua versus Fury and Hearn versus Frank Warren. There are multiple interests involved, and every side has a different priority. Some people care about the